All right, hello. This is Kathy from Psychedelic Stitchin. I had been planning to make a video for my ideal ID holder pattern for quite a while. I'm not really a tutorial maker or YouTube maker or creator. I like to do the sewing, but I wanted to make one for Halloween, so I figured I'd show you how I do it. All right, I already sewed the lanyard to make it a little quicker, but this is the binding strip. As with any strap or lanyard or anything, you take your 2-inch piece of fabric, fold it in half, iron, and then you fold it in half again, so you have a nice folded edge and then the double folded edge. And you always start on the double folded edge, and I just top stitched 1/8 of an inch around, and now I'll show you the rest of it. I already have all my pieces cut. This is the binding and the tab, the D-ring, my heavy, my clear vinyl, and the 2 pieces. I love this pattern because it's so quick to make. All right, I'm going to take, like, I always have a tendency to use a novelty fabric, so I like to make sure that it's going the right way. You're going to lay your lanyard down. You have a nice loop here, and then whichever way you decide, like I'm going to roll it down to the middle. So it has the loop at the end. It's nice and flat all the way down to the end here. Just hang on to that so it doesn't get mixed up. Put your clasp on it. It doesn't matter which way, you can turn it. And then you're going to overlap the 2 ends. My big hands. This is a method that is not mine. I've seen it done many times by many different creators. It helps the lanyard to lay flat. There's many different ways to do lanyards. You could do it however you wanted. This just happens to be the one. So make sure it's flat all the way, and we have the curve so it's not twisted. And we're going to sew the end. I usually do about 1/4 of an inch. You can, if you don't want your fabric to shift around when you're doing something like this, line them up and put your needle down before you start anything, and then start sewing. It should keep it from shifting so they become uneven, like even. It happens sometimes when you do that, but sometimes I want to keep straight and completely together. I always drop my needle first before I start sewing. Sewing? Did I say snowing? Okay, now that's nice and flat. You're going to flip it to the inside. So we'll roll the clasp over so that the clasp is down next to the seam. I fold the seam up towards the clasp so that seam is tucked in between next to the clasp. And then I pull it snug right there, and we're going to sew on that seam. It depends which way is easier. Sometimes I find this way, or as close to that seam as you can. Sometimes this is just a sewing machine and it doesn't get all that close. I go back and forth off the edge so it gives it a nice, what do you want to say? So it doesn't look like it's half on and half off. See, it just goes all the way over. That wasn't quite the straightest stitching I've done, but this is for me anyways. And then we'll clip all these pesky threads. Get that out of the way. I do use my letter a lot. Burning. With this machine, this is a Tex 33 thread that I got from the Thread Exchange. And it works well with bobbin and top thread with this machine, which is surprising because some of the 45s don't work for me. And then when you're done, flip it over that way, because you can do it either way, whichever one you wanted for your fabric to show. And that's it. That's your lanyard. That's the hardest part of this whole process. What you're going to do now is take your binding strip, which is the 7-inch strip. I mean, you can cut one 4 and one 3, whichever way you prefer. I just like to iron it all at once. I'm going to snip it right here. We're just going to do the D-ring tab with the 3-inch piece. The same way, this is how you would do the lanyard if you wanted to see. You'd take the folded sides. I usually do a little stitching at the top. A couple of stitches. 1/8 of an inch down the open folded edge. Across the bottom and back to the top. The ends are tucked away inside your ID holder anyway, so you don't have to be that, you don't really have to sew the ends. So as usual, I'm going to slide my D-ring on. It's all 1/2-inch hardware. A little clip. Like we did with the other one, I'm just going to about 1/4 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch in, so it doesn't flop around and it doesn't open when we're trying to sew. Okay, and that's that. We're going to set that aside. And now you'll take your clear vinyl and we're going to slide the short end into the binding. You could measure and do exactly, 3.5, but I just like to have a little extra on each side just so I make sure I get it straight. So you're going to slide that right on top. So I like the cat's face right in the middle. I'm going to clip it so it doesn't shift. And we're going to stitch right along the open side. So you're sliding that in as far as it'll go up to the fold. I usually use the edge of my foot. Maybe with this I'll go in a little bit more. And I'm at like 3 3/4 with this machine. Back stitch. And just nice and slow. Keeping it tucked in. Right across the top. You can trim it down now if you like. And there's the top. This is your vinyl piece with the binding on it. And then we have the exterior and the interior. I mean, the front and the back. And they both have their interfacing on it. It's a cotton woven fusible from, it's not SF-101, but, so I am choosing this one for my back. I'll do that for the back, and this will be the front. So you're going to take your vinyl and line it up right around the edges. And we're going to clip. Two is really good. That's all I ever need. Then we're going to take the back and put that face down. Use a different clip this time. We will clip here. Make sure it's pretty lined up. It gives you a little bit of leeway. Like, you definitely need to follow the seam allowance when you're top stitching an 1/8. Because it's been so long. We're going to start on the right side. We're not going to sew across the top. We're going to do 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I go back down to about a 3 for this part. So we're going to back stitch. from my quilting days, I take it up and lift it. You can pivot. Sometimes if you go right up the edge and start again, it gives you a little bit of a... It's straighter for me sometimes. I don't know why, but... And then we have that stitch again, so... Do your preferred method. I just take it out and line it up perfectly. And sometimes it shifts inside, so I like to just stretch it out, flatten it out. And now I'm just gonna, you clip your corners, as with everything. And then trim it down to about 1/8 of an inch. If you centered your fusible fleece, it should be right on the edge of that. Fusible interfacing, fusible fleece. I've been using fleece a lot lately. All right, now I'm gonna hit this with my iron real quick so it's easier to turn. And when I'm doing that, I wanna make sure, I said this was the back. So when you flip it, you wanna make sure that you flip the vinyl in the back or the front the same way. Did I just confuse you? Because this is gonna be the back. We want the vinyl side touching the front of the pouch. Real quick hit with it. Turn it. Try to do it as quick as possible so that the vinyl doesn't, you know, crease too much. It's usually pretty good. And then my trusty double-sided crochet hook. I love this because it has a nice rounded end. I do have a point turner that I'll be grabbing in a second. That has the sharper for the corners, but you want to be careful. I don't know how many projects I've ruined poking through because I get a little too carried away. Because with this, I like to make sure that your side edges are nice and lined up. Go out that way. I'm going to iron this from the side, obviously. You don't never iron vinyl. I know we've been told that a million times, but it's true. Put in. And after you iron, you can see the condensation. I'll let it cool for a second, but it's really nice and flat. Because then that'll be my back. If I don't want people to see what's on the front when I turn it around, that's a nice little, that's what they'll see. All right, home stretch. We're going to take the Deco Heavy. Now this is the important part. You want this to be a heavy because that's what it gives it its structure. So we're going to slide it in. I usually bend it a little. Slide it in all the way to the bottom. It should fit just right. Your seam allowances. Get it in there. And you feel that it's far enough in. You only need about a 1/2 inch. That, again, if everything's cut right, it should be at 1/2 inch that you will end up folding over. I mean, if you have 3/8 or a little bit more, a little bit less, no big deal. As long as you have enough to tuck in and sew it closed, that'll be fine. All right. So I like to tuck the front in first. Okay. Tuck the front in and then the back. I'll make sure it's nice and straight. Put a clip there. I always try to get it as, flat as possible on the sides. I don't care for it when those little seams kind of pop out a little. This side can go down a little bit more. This one is even as possible. If you get any little puckers here, that's what I use this for. I'm going to use this when I sew it to keep those. Like one of the very first ones I did, I noticed that. All right, now that that's, I'm going to give this a little quick shot with the iron again, just to hold that in place. And then you can measure, because now it's 3 inches, right at 1.5, and put that in. I usually kind of eyeball it. I want to slide that in as far as it'll go. Oh my goodness, my fingers are not working today. It's raining here and it always affects me. So, I mean, you can have it hanging out as far as you like. I don't like it hanging out that far, so that's good for me. And I'll put a clip right there just to hold it, because we're going to start on this side. All right. I don't know why I always start on the right side. I line up my foot, the center there, because that's just about 1/8. That's that's just how I do it. And I'm going to go back up to that 3 3/4. And we'll do a couple of back stitch. Up here is where I make sure that everything is tucked in there nice. And then I usually shift I have to position my needle over, because obviously if it was in the left position, it will hit. And then we're going to go across the top. I always back stitch a couple of times. You don't want to lose that. And then back to the beginning. It doesn't like that bobbin. And there we go. I told you my fingers aren't working. I'm sorry, these things are adorable. I have so many cards fitting there. I've been using my original one since I made them out of the pattern. And it does get a little loose here, but I had money in there and I had cards in there. I had my license. I was kind of overstuffing it. So just be wary of that. You don't need every card you own in there. Usually I just try to take whatever debit cards I'm using, a license, and maybe whatever, rewards card they have. But it's so cute. Well, thank you very much. I hope this helped. Let me know in the comments. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and of course, you can get the pattern in my Etsy shop, Psychedelic Stitchin. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye.